Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the case of the Common Area Satellite Dish. It's this fascinating micro-case study that perfectly illustrates the immense power of restrictive covenants and, honestly, the absolute importance of keeping written records. We're going to look at a real-world dispute out in Arizona to explore property rights, strict rules, and heavy burden of proof. So let's get right into it.
So have you ever battled your homeowners association? I mean, we've all either been there or, we've heard the absolute horror stories. You walk out to your mailbox, open it up, and there it is, that dreaded formal violation notice staring right back at you. It's a universal feeling of dread. But how do these disputes actually play out when push comes to shove in a formal legal setting? Today, we're taking a completely impartial look at one specific dispute to see exactly how the law handles these everyday neighborhood conflicts.
Let's meet the players for today's case. On one side, we have homeowner Steve Ikeda. On the other side, his HOA, Riverview Park Condominiums. Steve found himself locked in a serious legal battle with his HOA over what might initially seem like a totally trivial issue, a fine over a satellite dish. But as you'll see, in the world of property law and planned communities, there's really no such thing as a trivial issue. Everything is governed by a very specific set of rules.
Okay, let's dive into this and look at the timeline. It's kind of like an administrative law mystery. Back in 2007, when Mr. Ikeda bought his condo, he installed a satellite dish in the common area. Fast forward to 2011, and Ikeda leases the condo to a tenant. Well, the tenant removes the old dish and installs a brand new one in the exact same spot. Then, bam, the trouble begins. In April 2012, the HOA hits Ikeda with a violation notice. After months of back-and-forth arguments, in August 2012, Ikeda officially files a petition with the Department of Fire, Building, and Life Safety to fight the fine.
The rules and regulations. To really understand why this escalated so quickly, we have to examine Riverview Park's governing documents, the Articles of Incorporation, the bylaws, and most importantly, the CC&Rs. These aren't just polite neighborhood suggestions, they are binding legal contracts. Take a close look at the exact wording used in Riverview's CC&Rs. It states, "No antenna, satellite television dish, shall be erected, used, or maintained outdoors unless approved in writing by the Board of Directors." What's really interesting about this is that strict, totally unambiguous requirement. It doesn't say unless the board gives you the thumbs up. It explicitly demands approval in writing. And honestly, this seemingly small detail is the hinge upon which this entire case swings. Now, you might be wondering, why does that exact phrasing matter so much? Well, it comes down to what the administrative law judge referred to as the cardinal principle of interpreting restrictive covenants. Under Arizona law, specifically citing a case called Powell v. Washburn, when a restrictive covenant is unambiguous, meaning it's perfectly clear and leaves absolutely no room for confusion, it's strictly enforced exactly as written. The law doesn't care about bending clear rules to make things fair. It simply enforces the contract.
Weighing the evidence. I want you to play the role of the judge for a second. How does a judge actually decide who wins when a homeowner and an HOA completely clash over a missing document? First, we got to establish the rules of the game. In this type of administrative proceeding, the homeowner, Mr. Ikeda, bears the burden of proof. But what level of proof are we talking about? Well, he has to prove his case by a preponderance of the evidence. Translated from legalese into plain English, this just means the evidence must show that a fact is more probable than not. It's not like a criminal trial where it has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. It basically means his version of events just needs to be, say, 51% more convincing than the HOA's.
Let's contrast their claims. Ikeda's argument is that when he bought the unit back in 2007, the prior management absolutely granted him written permission to install the dish. The problem? He testified that the original written document had been lost over the years. We've all lost paperwork, right? But on the flip side, Riverview Park Condominiums argued that when they took over, all the administrative files from the prior management company were transferred to them, and those files, they contained absolutely zero written proof of any such permission.
Knowing he didn't have the original document, Ikeda presented his main piece of evidence, a letter dated June 7, 2012. He actually managed to track down the prior management company. The letter confirmed his story, stating that Mark Dawson, the former developer and president of the association, had indeed authorized that 2007 installation. Ikeda essentially argued, look, this retroactive letter should be accepted as conclusive proof that I had written permission back when the original dish went up.
But the HOA came back with a really brilliant, strict counter-argument regarding the timeline. Remember 2011? Ikeda's stance was that his tenant just replaced the dish, relying on the past permission granted in 2007. It was in the exact same location, after all. But the HOA pointed out a critical technical flaw. Even if Ikeda had permission for the original dish, that dish was removed. Installing a brand new satellite dish in 2011 constituted a completely new action. Under the strict text of the CC&Rs, that new dish required its own fresh, written permission. And it was totally undisputed that no new permission was ever sought or granted in 2011.
The judge's final decision. So, the crucial point is how Administrative Law Judge Tammy L. Agan here interprets this whole clash. We have a lost original document, a retroactive letter, and a replaced dish, all going up against the strict wording of the CC&Rs. I want you to pause for a second and mentally guess the outcome here. Did Ikeda actually prove this case? Did a retroactive letter from the former developer outweigh the current HOA's empty filing cabinets and the whole technicality of the 2011 replacement? Was it more probable than not that he was legally compliant?
Well, on January 7, 2013, the ruling came down. The petition was dismissed. The judge concluded that Ikeda failed to establish by a preponderance of the evidence that he had the required written permission. Therefore, the HOA didn't violate the CC&Rs by imposing the fine. The strict text of the contract ruled the day. Because the original written approval was lost, and because a new dish was installed without a new request, his retroactive letter just wasn't enough to carry the burden of proof.
Once an agency decision like this becomes final, which happened automatically in February 2013, the bureaucratic reality really sets in. As the certification document outlines, the legal avenues remaining for a homeowner are pretty difficult. You can request a rehearing from the department, or you can seek review by the Superior Court. But you have to act fast. The law is incredibly strict about deadlines, explicitly warning that your rights can literally be lost if you don't take action in a timely manner.
This entire case leaves us with such a highly practical, everyday lesson. Verbal agreements, handshakes, or lost documents, they just cannot defeat a strict written contract. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought. If your HOA or your landlord or literally anyone you have a contract with challenged an old agreement today, where is your written proof? Do you have it saved somewhere safe? Because as we've just seen, when you walk into a hearing room, if it isn't in writing, it might as well not exist. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Make sure to keep your files organized, and I'll see you next time.